Hello, housemates, and welcome back to Planescape Torment on the River Lethe. This episode is going to be me reading a lot. We're going to sit in this hut and we're going to talk to Dakon about his endless circle of Zerthamon. You have to be a mage in order to do this. It takes a long time if you actually go through and read everything, but it is well worth it for the mad XP that you will get, and you start to get some serious backstory when you do this. So it's really, it's a good time. So, what you gotta do, you gotta go to Dakon's inventory. Actually, you have to talk to him first.
What is your will?
There are things I would know, Dakon. I will hear you. Can I talk to you about your teachings? Dakon waits. Can you teach me anything of the art, Dakon? Know that the way of the people is not the same as the art you have come to know. It is not the energy that gives strength. It is knowing the self that gives strength. The teachings of Zerthamon speak of such things. Would you teach me the way of Zerthamon, Dakon? Do you know what you have asked? The texture of Dakon's blade flows until it becomes a stone. To walk the path of Zerthamon, you must know of the people. The knowing of such things by one not of the people is a difficult matter. There are those not of the people who have heard the way of Zerthamon, but they do not know the way. Dakon, I want to know of the people and know Zerthamon's teachings. I believe there is wisdom to be learned in such things.
Updated my journal.
Know that I have heard your words and I shall test them. To learn, you must know the people. To know the people, you must know the unbroken circle of Zerthamon. Dakon holds up the stone disc in his possession, and his spider-like fingers hook into its sides. There is a click, and the plates of the circle slide into a new configuration. He reverses the motion, sealing the stone. No, the first circle of Zerthamon is open to you. Study it, then I will hear your words. Very well, I will examine it, and then speak with you again. So you have to go back and forth between examining the circle by using it from his inventory and then talking to him again. This small round stone is the Unbroken Circle of Zerthamon. The Unbroken Circle is a Zerth religious text containing teachings of Zerthamon, the founder of the Githzerai people. The circle is made up of a series of interlocking circles that fold out from one another, depending on which branch the reader wishes to follow in the path of the teachings. It is said that some Zerths spend years poring over the combination of plates, looking for new significance in the teachings. Dakon seems to use this text as a means of focusing his spell-casting abilities, for he pores over the tablet occasionally, memorizing the words. It took the various Zerths years. It's going to take us 20 minutes. This small round... Oh, we've already read that part. Unlock the first plate, as Dakon showed you. You mirror the motions that Dakon made upon the circle, and the plate gives way at your touch, the rings sliding into a new configuration. Upon the rings are a series of symbols. The script is like no writing you have ever seen. It is a series of interlocking geometries, with circles predominating. Just looking at it, you know the symbols, and know you can read them. Read the first circle. Know that we are the first people. Once, all was chaos. The first people were thought drawn from chaos. When the first people came to know themselves, they were chaos no longer and became flesh. With their thoughts and knowing of matter, the people shaped the first world and dwelled there with their knowing to sustain them. Yet, the flesh was new to the people, and with it the people came not to know themselves. The flesh gave rise to new thoughts, greed and hates, pains and joys, jealousies and doubts. All of these fed upon each other, and the minds of the people were divided. In their division, the people were punished. The emotions of the flesh were strong. The greed and hates, the pains and joys, the jealousies and doubts, all of these served as a guiding stone to enemies. in becoming flesh, the first people became enslaved to those who knew flesh only as tools for their will. No, these beasts were the Illithids. The Illithids were a race that had come not to know themselves. They had learned how to make other races not know themselves. They were the tentacled ones. They lived in flesh and saw flesh as tools for their will. Their blood was as water, and they shaped minds with their thoughts. When the Illithids came upon the people were a people no more. The people became slaves. The Illithids took the people from the first world and brought them to the false worlds. As the people labored upon the false worlds, the Illithids taught them the way of the flesh. Through them, the people came to know loss. They came to know suffering. They came to know death, both of the body and mind. They came to know what it is to be the herd of another and have their flesh consumed. They came to know the horror of being made to feel joy in such things. The unbroken circle is the knowing of how the people lost themselves and how they came to know themselves again. All right, so after you read the first thing, you got to go talk to Dakon. So this is going to be a sort of pseudo-mythical history thing.
What is your will?
I have read the Unbroken Circle of Zerthamon. I want to speak to you more about the way of Zerthamon. What did you come to know? Strength lies in knowing oneself. I learned that once someone does not know themselves, they are lost. They become a tool for others. So, you have to have sufficient intelligence to be able to get the right answer here. I don't know exactly the tiers. I think it's to get through all the circles, you need to have at least 16 intelligence, or maybe it's 18 to get through all of them. To do the first couple, you need, like, I think 14 through 16, or I mean 13 through 16, I'm not exactly sure. But the right answer is always the one which is not literal. So the literal thing would be, I learned that your people were once slaves to the Illithids. Like, the historical facts are the wrong answers. You always have to find the message behind the actual longer text, and which is sort of a moral or a message, something like that. So it's number 1 here, which we already said.
Updated my journal.
And you get XP. Right now it's a little, soon it will be a lot.
You have come to know the first circle of Zerthamon. You not only see the words of Zerthamon, you have come to know them.
Dakon holds up the circle and hooks his fingers around the edges. There is a click, and the plates of the circle slide into a new configuration. He reverses the motion, sealing the stone.
No, the second circle of Zerthamon is open to you. Study it, then I will hear your words.
And eventually, we're also going to start getting spells that we can memorize from it. So let's clear out our inventory.
It's in my spell book. It's in my spell book. It's in my spell book.
Memorizing spells is trivially easy when you have, 18 intelligence like we do. But you can fail, I believe. Although, maybe not. Maybe I'm thinking of Baldur's Gate. I think you can fail, but we won't because of our 18 intelligence. Second circle. You slide the plates, blah, blah, blah. Know that flesh cannot mark steel. Know that steel may mark flesh. In knowing this, Zerthamon became free. Know that the tentacled ones were of flesh. They relied on the flesh and used it as tools for their will. One of the places where flesh served their will was the field of husks on the false world of the Illithids. Their fields were where the bodies of the people were cast after the Illithids had consumed their brains. When the brain had been devoured, the husks came to be fertilizer to grow the poison-stemmed grasses of the Illithids. Zerthamon worked the fields with no knowing of himself or what he had become. He was a tool of flesh, and the flesh was content. It was upon these fields Zerthamon came to know the scripture of steel.
During one of the turnings, as Zerthamon tilled the fields with his hand, he came across a husk whose brain remained within it. It had not been used as food, yet it was dead. The thought that one of these husks had died a death without serving as food for the Illithids was a thought Zerthamon had difficulty understanding. From that thought came a desire to know what had happened to the husk. Embedded in the skull of the husk was a steel blade. It had pierced the bone. Zerthamon realized that was what had killed the husk. The steel had marked the flesh, but the flesh had not marked the steel. Zerthamon took the blade and studied its surface. In it, he saw his reflection. It was in the reflection of the steel that Zerthamon first knew himself. Its edge was sharp, its will the wearer's. It was the blade that taught. It was the blade that would become raised against Gith when Zerthamon made the pronouncement of two skies. Zerthamon kept the blade for many turnings, and many were the thoughts he had about it. He used it in the fields to aid his work. In using it, he thought about how it was not used. The Illithids were powerful. Zerthamon had believed that there was nothing they did not know, yet the Illithids had never carried tools of steel. They only used flesh as tools. Everything was done through flesh, for the tentacled ones were made of flesh and they knew flesh. Yet, steel was superior to flesh. When the blade had killed the husk, it was the flesh that had been weaker than the steel. It was then that Zerthamon came to know that flesh yielded to steel. In knowing that, he came to know that steel was stronger than the Illithids. Steel became the scripture of the people. Know that steel is the scripture by which the people came to know freedom.
What is your will?
I have read The Unbroken Circle of Zerthamon, and I want to speak about it.
What did you come to know?
I learned that not knowing something can be a tool, just like flesh and steel, if upon encountering it, you attempt to know its nature and how it came to be.
You have seen the words, and you have seen beyond them. You have come to know the second circle of Zerthamon.
He takes the circle, and with a deft motion, he twists one of the links, so one of the plates slides forth. But strangely enough, the stone still appears intact. He hands the plate to you.
Meditate upon this teaching, and the knowing of it shall give you strength. When you have absorbed it, you shall know more.
Very well. I will study this circle. Yet, I would still know more of Zerthamon's teachings. Dakon's fingers feel around the edges of the stone circle, and he twists it clockwise, the links clicking until they have settled into a new configuration. He then reverses the motion, resetting the stone.
The next circle of Zerthamon is open to you. Study it, then I will hear your words.
So now we actually got a second circle of Zerthamon, which is a spell that you can learn, Scripture of Steel. And we'll get these for the rest of the circles that we read and unlock.
It's in my spell book.
All right. No, that's not what I want. Third circle. Examine the third circle. Zerthamon labored many turnings for the Illithid. Lethe twice deceased, and his partnership in the cavernous heavens of the false worlds. His duties would have broken the backs of many others, but Zerthamon labored on, suffering torment and exhaustion. It came to pass that the Illithid Lethe twice deceased ordered Zerthamon before him in his many-veined Galleria. He claimed that Zerthamon had committed slights of obstinance and cowardice against his partnership. The claim had no weight of truth, for Lethe only wished to know if flames raged within Zerthamon's heart. He wished to know if Zerthamon's heart was one of a slave or of a rebel. Zerthamon surrendered to Illithid punishment rather than reveal his newfound strength. He knew that were he to show the hatred in his heart, it would serve nothing, and it would harm others that felt as he. He chose to endure the punishment and was placed within the pillars of silence so that he might suffer for a turning. Lashed upon the pillars, Zerthamon moved his mind to a place where pain could not reach, leaving his body behind. He lasted a turning, and when he was brought before River twice deceased, he gave gratitude for his punishment to the Illithid, as was custom. In doing so, he proved himself a slave in the Illithid eyes, while his heart remained free. By enduring and quenching the fires of his hatred, he allowed River twice deceased to think him weak. When the time of the rising came, River was the first of the Illithid to know death by Zerthamon's hand and die a third death.
What is your will?
What did you come to know?
Endure, and enduring grow strong. The words you speak seem to strike Dakon strangely. As you speak them, his forehead creases, then resettles into its normal passive expression.
Your will has brought you the knowing of the third circle of Zerthamon. With this knowing, I impart this to you.
He takes the circle and with a deft motion he twists one of the links so that one of the plates slides forth. He hands you the plate.
Meditate upon its teachings, and the knowing of it shall give you strength.
Very well. I will study this circle. Is there more you can teach me? As you ask the words, you suddenly notice that Dakon isn't looking at you. He is holding the unbroken circle in his hands, studying it. His blade has taken on the same texture as the unbroken circle, and Dakon seems older somehow. Dakon? Dakon's black eyes rise from the circle and look at you.
Know that I did not believe you would come to know the teachings of the circle. It is a difficult path you will walk in learning the way of Zerthamon. Is your mind focused on this matter?
Yes, I wish to learn more. Dakon's fingers feel around the edges of the stone circle, and he twists it clockwise, the links clicking until they have settled into a new configuration. He then reverses the motion, resetting the stone.
The next circle of Zerthamon is open to you. Study it, then I will hear your words.
I feel stronger.
I went up a level. I think I continue gaining 0 hit points until I exceed my original fighter level, which is another reason to not level up as a fighter beforehand. So, and also, I don't think I get more ability points until I exceed the fighter level, so I don't get to buff my my stats there. So there's a whole bunch of reasons that the way that I did this was inefficient, which is unfortunate. Oh wait, and I have another spell.
It's in my spell book.
Unlock the 4th circle. Read it. Know that the rising of the people against the Illithid was a thing built upon many 10 turnings of labor. Many of the people were gathered and taught in secret the ways of defeating their Illithid masters. They were taught to shield their minds and use them as weapons. They were taught the scripture of steel, and, most importantly, they were given the knowing of freedom. Some of the people learned the nature of freedom and took it into their hearts. The knowing gave them strength. Others feared freedom and kept silent. But there were those that knew freedom and knew slavery, and it was their choice that the people remained chained. One of these was Vilkar. Vilkar saw no freedom in the rising, but opportunity. He saw the Illithid had spawned across many of the false worlds. Their worlds numbered so many that their vision was turned only outwards, to all they did not already touch. Vilkar's eyes saw that much took place the Illithid did not see. To the rising, the Illithid were blinded. Vilkar came before his master, the Illithid Zigitaris, with the knowing of the rising. Vilkar added to his chains and offered to be their eyes against the rising. In exchange, Vilkar asked to be rewarded for his service. The Illithid agreed to his contract. At the bonding of the contract, a dark time occurred. Many were the betrayals Vilkar committed, and many were the people that the Illithids fed upon to stem the rising. It seemed that the rising would die before it could occur, and the Illithid were pleased with Vilkar's eye. It was near the end of this dark time when Zerthamon came to know Vilkar's treacheries. In knowing Vilkar's eye, Zerthamon forced the Rising to silence itself, so that Vilkar might think at last his treacheries had succeeded and the Rising had fallen. He knew that Vilkar's eye was so filled only with the reward he had been promised, he would see what he wished to see. With greed beating in his heart, Vilkar came to the Illithid Zigataris and spoke to his master of success. He said that the Rising had fallen, and the Illithids were safe to turn their eyes outward once more. He praised their wisdom in using Vilkar's eye, and asked them for his reward. In his greed blindness, Vilkar had forgotten the knowing of why the people had sought freedom. He had lost the knowing of what slavery meant. He had forgotten what his Illithid masters saw when they looked upon him. And so, Vilkar's betrayal of the people was ended with another betrayal. Vilkar came to know that when Vilkar's eye had nothing left to see, Vilkar's eye was useless. The Illithid gave to Vilkar his reward, opening the cavity of his skull and devouring his brain. Vilkar's corpse was cast upon the field of husks, so its blood might water the poison-stemmed grasses.
What is your will?
What did you come to know?
When one chooses to see only what is before them, they see only a part of the whole. They are blind, and just as Vilkar was blinded by his promised reward, so were the Illithid blinded to the true Rising. For when they heard Vilkar's words, they turned their sight outwards again, didn't they? And the Rising was free to strike.
Know that you speak truly. Vilkar's eye blinded both Vilkar and the Illithids. The tentacled ones thought the Rising to be no more. When the Rising occurred, the ground drank deep of Illithid blood. So was victory born from treachery.
You can see that the XP has been increasing. It's 5 times as much as we originally had gotten. It is a curious lesson. Why would it be part of the teachings of Zerthamon? Dakon's blade bleeds into a dead night black, and his voice deepens. For a moment, you think he's angry, but you're not so sure.
There is much about the way of Zerthamon and his path that is difficult to know.
Do you know why Vilkar's eye is a part of the way of Zerthamon?
It is a part of the telling of how our people came to know freedom. It lets us know that there are those, even among the people, who are not of the people, and that even in the greatest treachery, a greater knowing may be achieved.
Very well.
You have come to know the 4th circle of Zerthamon.
He takes the circle and with a deft motion twists one of the links so the plate slides forth. He hands the plate to you.
Meditate upon its teaching, and the knowing of it shall give you strength.
I would know more of the way of Zerthamon. Dakon's fingers feel around the edges of the stone circle, and he twists it clockwise, the links clicking until they have settled into a new configuration. He then reverses the motion, resetting the stone.
The next circle is open to you. Study it, then I will hear your words.
So once again,
It's in my spell book.
unlock the 5th circle and read it. Zerthamon was the first to know the way of freedom, yet it was not he that first came to know the way of rebellion. The knowing of rebellion came to the warrior queen Gith, one of the people. She had served the Illithids upon many false worlds as a soldier, and she had come to know war and carried it in her heart. She had come to know how others might be organized to subjugate others. She knew the paths of power, and she knew the art of taking from the conquerors the weapons by which they could be defeated. Her mind was focused, and both her will and her blade were as one. The turning in which Zerthamon came to know Gith, Zerthamon ceased to know himself. Her words were as fires lit in the hearts of all who heard her. In hearing her words, he wished to know war. He knew not what afflicted him, but he knew he wished to join his blade to Gith. He wished to give his hate expression and share his pain with the Illithid. Gith was one of the people, but her knowing of herself was greater than any Zerthamon had ever encountered. She knew the ways of flesh, she knew the Illithids, and in knowing herself, she was to know how to defeat them in battle. The strength of her knowing was so great that all those who walked her path came to know themselves. Gith was but one. Her strength was such that it caused others to know their strength, and Zerthamon laid his steel at her feet.
What is your will?
What did you come to know?
There is great strength in numbers, but there is great power in one, for the strength of the will of one may gather numbers to it. There is strength not only in knowing the self, but knowing how to bring it forth in others.
You have come to know the fifth circle of Zerthamon. With this knowing, I impart this to you. Meditate upon its teachings, and the knowing of it shall give you strength.
I would know more of the way of Zerthamon.
The next circle of Zerthamon is open to you. Study it, then I will hear your words.
It's in my spell book.
Unlock the sixth circle. Read it. Upon the blasted plains, Zerthamon told Gith that there cannot be two skies. In the wake of his words came war. Upon the blasted plains, the people had achieved victory over their Illithid masters. They knew freedom. Yet before the green fires had died from the battlefield, Gith spoke of continuing the war. Many, still filled with bloodlust in their hearts, agreed with her. She spoke of not merely defeating the Illithids, but destroying all Illithids across the plains. After the Illithid had been exterminated, they would bring war to all other races they encountered. In Gith's heart, fires raged. She lived in war, and in war she knew herself. All that her eyes saw, she wanted to conquer. Zerthamon spoke the beginnings of that which was against Gith's will. He spoke that the people already knew freedom. Now they should know themselves again and mend the damage that had been done to the people. Behind his words were many other hearts of the people who were weary of the war against the Illithid. Know that Gith's heart was not Zerthamon's heart on this matter. She said that the war would continue. The Illithid would be destroyed. Their flesh would be no more. Then the people would claim the false worlds as their own. Gith told Zerthamon that they would be under the same sky in this matter. The words were like bared steel. From Zerthamon came the pronouncement of two skies. In the wake of his words came war. No, talk. Do it.
What is your will?
What did you come to know?
I know that Zerthamon's devotion to the people was such that he was willing to protect them from themselves. He knew that Illithids had come not to know themselves in their obsession with control and domination, so he chose to stop Gith before she carried the people to their deaths. There must be balance in all things, or else the self will not hold.
You have seen the words and know them.
Dakon's voice slows, and his hands grip the edges of the unbroken circle. He twists it clockwise, and there's a click, and two plates slide forth. Dakon stares at the two plates in his hand. He makes no move to hand them to you. Dakon, is that second plate for you? Dakon falls silent. His blade has ceased shimmering, the film freezing upon its surface. He is staring at the second plate, paralyzed. Do you know the sixth circle? Dakon looks up, but his coal-black eyes do not meet your gaze.
No, there is nothing more I may teach you. You know the way as the people know it, and it shall give you the direction by which you may know yourself.
That's not what I asked. Do you know the sixth circle or not? Dakon is silent for a moment, then speaks, his voice slow and careful.
It has come to pass that I do not know the sixth circle of Zerthamon. Once I knew it, but I know now I only saw the words.
Dakon's eyes stare through you.
That is all. It is my path that I no longer know the way of Zerthamon.
Dakon, there is one other thing I would know. Why is Vilkar's eye in the circle of Zerthamon? It seems strange. It tells of how the people benefited from a treachery from their own. It seems... Dakon's eyes flash.
I have told you it is part of the telling of how the people came to know freedom. Do you not listen?
His voice flattens, as if he is reciting a passage from memory.
It tells the people that even in the greatest treachery, a greater knowing may be achieved.
It doesn't sound to me like you believe that. I think there's another reason Vilkar's eye is in the circle of Zerthamon. It is set there because of the sixth circle and the pronouncement of two skies. It's there to justify Zerthamon's treachery to the people upon the blasted plains. Dakon is silent, and his blade bleeds into a dead black, teeth rippling along the edge. He divided the people upon the blasted plains, Dakon. He divided your race when they were on the path to victory. I would like to believe that it was because he wished to save the people from themselves, but I don't think you believe that. Dakon is silent for a moment. Then he speaks slowly.
I do not know the sixth circle as it is known to the others. I fear that the third circle, the fourth circle, and the sixth circle are more closely linked than many know. It is in that knowing that I have lost myself.
In the third circle, Zerthamon submerged his will to deceive the Illithids. Then in the fourth circle, it speaks of the benefits of treachery. Then, in the sixth circle, Zerthamon divides his people before they exterminate the Illithids. Do you think Zerthamon's words may not have been his own?
Know my words, and know the wound that lies upon my heart. I fear that when Zerthamon was upon the Pillars of Silence, he did not submerge his will. I fear that his will was taken from him by the Illithid, and when he spoke upon the blasted plain, it was their words he spoke. I fear that what he did was not for the people's sake, but for our former masters.
It's possible, but no, it doesn't necessarily mean that...
Updated my journal.
Then know this, and speak no more of it.
Dakon's voice is like a knife.
Know that I shall never know the truth. There is no resolution to this matter, for I shall never know Zerthamon's heart upon the blasted plains.
His coal-black eyes glare at the stone circle in his hand.
And so, I do not know myself because of the unbroken circle of Zerthamon.
Very well, Dakon. We'll discuss this no more. Let's move on.
I feel stronger.
Yeah, level up.
0 hit points.
Okay, so you'll see now we have 2 of these 6 circles. One is for
It's
you.
in my spell book.
One is for another mage, mostly Dakon. Can it only be Dakon? Yeah. No, it's by any mage. Okay. So there is at least one other mage that we'll get
Spell
eventually.
has been added to my
You give that to
teachings.
him, but we're going to give it to Dakon because that's thematically appropriate. But we are not done.
What is your will?
No, I don't want to talk to you. Examine the plates and see if you can puzzle out any new combinations. So this is where you have to have, I think, 16 intelligence or more. As you examine the rings of the second circle, you find a strange link in the plate that mentions the laboring of the Gith people to achieve the rising. A new circle emerges from the link, and you unlock it, pulling the plate forth so you can study it. Know that the rising of the people against the Illithid was a thing built upon many turnings. Many were the people who lived and died under Time's blade while the rising was shaped. The rising was shaped upon a slow foundation. Steel was gathered so that it might mark Illithid flesh. A means of knowing the movements of the Illithids was established, at first weak and confused, then stronger, like a child finding its voice. When the movements were known, then the Illithids were observed. In observing them, their ways of the mind were known. When the ways of the Illithid were known, many of the people were gathered and taught in secret the means to shield their minds and the way to harness their will as weapons. They were taught the scripture of steel and, most importantly, they were given the knowing of freedom. These things were not learned quickly. The knowing of much of the way was slow, and in all these things Time's weight fell upon all. from the knowing of one's reflection in a steel blade, to the knowing of submerging the will, to the knowing of seeing itself. All of these things and more the people built upon. In time, they came to know the whole. So now, let's go surprise Dakon.
What is your will?
There was a seventh circle within the Stone of Zerthamon. It spoke of the building of the rebellion against the Illithids. Dakon falls silent. What does this seventh circle speak of? I don't know. Wait, what? I should know this. It speaks of time and labor, but I haven't found the meaning. When I know its wisdom, I shall share it with you. I wonder if in the restoration they built in, like, some sort of time trigger so that you can't just blast through it like I'm doing here. Because, character, maybe you have to be a certain mage level. My intelligence is 18. That can't be the bar unless they just pushed it up a lot. Because in the playthrough, that I'm doing on my own, they can just blast straight through it. Just make sure I read it all the way through. I don't think anything new happened there. So it may just be that they, in the restoration, they've changed a little bit about how this works. Yeah. Okay. So we'll just have to figure out how that works. So let's go gather experience then, so that we can up our mage level. Let's see. There's some stuff we could do here. Yeah. Go up. Talk to Marrow Friend. What's up, Marrow Friend? You can smell the reek of dung and rotting meat on this man, even from afar. Though obviously weak and decrepit, his long, thin fingers and sunken eyes give him a sinister look as he scutters through the garbage around him. The way he drools and rolls his eyes make you wonder if he's mad. Greetings. He tries to focus on you, but his gaze wanders. His eyes are set deeply in hollow sockets, and his skin is terribly pale and diseased, covered with rashes and yellowed patches that look ready to peel from his body at any moment. The stench emanating from him is terrible. As you open your mouth to speak, he licks his lips and swallows. You deader? What did you say? You... He licks his lips, and his long, spindly fingers pick at his skin as he stares at you. Deader? He glances to your left, then his eyes dart back to you. Dead? Dead? Hungry. He reaches out to touch you, licking his scabrous lips. Let him touch you. His fingers scrabble spider-like on your arm, as if looking for a piece to tear off. He licks his split lips again, and you watch yellowish drool drip from them. With a raspy moan, his fingers suddenly dig into the skin of your arm and pull off a bit. Step back. You watch, and you feel your stomach churn as he takes a bit of flesh and shoves it into his mouth. He chews it, slowly, then swallows. You dead? No, I'm not dead. You taste dead. He scratches himself beneath his robe, and you suddenly notice that he has a finger hanging from his neck on a cord. It looks like there's a ring on it. Still hungry. What do you usually eat? He makes a snuffling noise, like a pig. Dead. What is that finger bone? He looks down, his plague-ridden features twisting into a ghastly, snaggle-toothed parody of a grin. Snack. He looks ready to chew it. Don't eat that. Have a bite off me instead. I'm more fresh. He smiles and reaches for your outstretched hand. Give me the finger bone first, Marrow Friend. He nods greedily and lets you take the finger bone. So if you don't let him bite you, that makes you more chaotic because it's like breaking a promise. We'll go ahead and let him bite you because I just want to read gross stuff to you. His teeth sink into the meat of your forearm and pull a chunk away with a single wrench of his neck. The pain is excruciating, but Marrow Friend sits on his haunches as if nothing has happened, chewing noisily the mouthful of meat he has pulled away. Thanks. Farewell. So, we just let someone eat us to get this finger bone. This is a well-decayed and nearly meatless finger bone from a humanoid of roughly your size. There is still some sort of odd ring on the finger. It's an intricate thing, sculpted with dozens of tiny ornate flanges and decorative protrusions. Oddly enough, it seems firmly rooted to the finger, and no amount of pulling or prying will budge the thing. Almost as if the ring's jagged edges had dug into the lifeless finger itself and refused to leave. Pull the ring away from the finger. Try as you might, you cannot remove the ring. Remove your own finger and replace it with the finger bone, because that's the first thing that would occur to a sane person. You place the ring finger of your left hand into your mouth, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and bite down as hard as you can. There is a sickening crunch, and you are overcome with the taste and smell of blood. You spit the bloody finger out and place the rotted, ring-laden finger against the gushing stump. At first, nothing happens, and you are horrified at the thought of what you've just done. Suddenly, though, you feel a strange tingling sensation as bones fuse and tendons re-knit. In moments, the rotting finger bone has become a living part of your body, though it still throbs painfully. The jagged ring suddenly loosens and slips into the palm of your hand. So, that's one of the many times that you will mutilate yourself for gain. Yeah, get used to it. So, this is a cursed ring. It gives you +2 to armor class. Something that's cursed, you can't take off unless you get remove curse, which is a service you can pay for instance, at the midwives. But we're going to put it on because our armor class blows. So, we now have 6 instead of 8, and that's great. I think we're going to end this episode here. We didn't get to read as far through the Circle of Zerthamon as we thought because the Restoration patch has done something to gate your progress through it. I'm not exactly sure what that is. I guess we'll find out as time goes on. I'm guessing that it's probably mage level, but it could be some sort of reputation progression with Dakon as well. I'm not exactly sure. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video, though it was a great deal of reading. So if you did, please hit that thumbs up button. If you'd like to see more of Planescape Torment, then please subscribe to my channel. If you're not going to do any of those things, well then, I don't care what you do.